Being and Becoming by Fenwicke, Holmes. Being, or the changeless life. We live in the midst of God, and yet we do not know Him. Mysteries press in upon us on every hand, and yet we fail to understand. A worm goes to sleep and wakes up a butterfly. An egg is warmed for 3 weeks in a drawer, and a chicken breaks forth from its marble cell. A bullet cuts its way through shrieking flesh, and internal agents restore every organ cell for cell and nerve for nerve. A nut, an egg, or a grain of sand hides within it the secret of life. To explain one of them is to explain everything. Yet how often it is looked upon either as a miracle or a fraud when a man turns the inspired eye of faith to an inner power and is lifted from the very bed of death itself, or in dire financial straits call upon God and find supply, or in peril by sea or land discovers a guardian angel who points out for him a star and a way. How rash we are in these days of mystery, when science has discovered that the more we know the less we know, to declare that with God anything is possible. And perhaps we are still more rash when we dare to pass critical judgment on the use of any power, whether we call that power God or mind or consciousness or truth. No power used to lighten the burdens of life or to inspire the soul to renewed faith and effort can be anything but good. Some day all men shall know this is true, and that the first and greatest of all sayings is this: Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God, the Lord is one, and beside me there is none other. Then force, energy, and life shall be found to come from a common source, and whosoever shall lift the burden of another's woe and pain through the use of force at his command shall do the will of my Father who is in heaven. What then is the wonder that lies back of a nut, an egg, or a grain of sand, a healed wound, the cure of a cancer, the demonstration of success, and the glory of an uplifted faith? We can at least get closer to the causal mystery, even though our investigations show us more of what we do not know than what we know. And even though abashed by what he discovers, man may still feel that happily he knows somewhat more than he knows, and even in the nut, the egg, and the grain of sand, he may find a common factor which relates them to each other and perhaps to himself. The greatest of scientists today are telling us that we live in a universe alive with intelligence, and the advanced investigator does not hesitate to declare that all nature is alive. But if we declare that our riddle is answered by the word life, what have we? We have this, that we have reduced the universe to one, and we have found that it is related to us in some way. But what is life? It is a curious thing that we should thus live in a living universe and yet not be able to tell what life is. It is one of nature's paradoxes. All that we can say is that life is, and the absence of it is what men call death. But we can go on studying how it acts and the law by which it is governed, or by which it governs, in order that by our knowledge we may control our body and affairs. Life is absolute or all. Probably the most important discovery of the new science of life is that it is universally present. We no longer think of life as being found only in some entity, here in a lily, there in a dog, but we find it everywhere, here in the stone and there in the star. There are plenty of evidences of life manifesting itself in inarticulate nature, of life of which, when we find it, we can but acknowledge the presence. We cannot say what it is, we can only say it is. The great seer Moses perceived the presence of this life in the flaming bush. In himself and in nature he discovered something more than form and beauty. He found that something in nature that replied to a something in himself, and communing with it, he asked, "What is your name?" He could not define this presence, but it seemed to say, "I am that I am." I am denotes life or existence, and that I am shows that it cannot be defined in terms. But that which cannot be defined in terms must be the absolute. Life, then, is absolute. It is all. The all is found, therefore, not merely in nature and in man, but as nature and as man, and yet more than nature and man. All that we perceive is one and inseparable with it, for all is life. This life is what we call spirit. Spirit is, therefore, life, mind, intelligence, all. So anything or anyone or all can say, "I am." I am comes from the verb to be, and denotes being. Being, therefore, indicates that which is. Apart from time or space, it is that which was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be. Nor is it something outside of us. It is rather something within us which makes us what we are. It is spirit, or first cause in us. It is that subtle substance of the soul, coming forth into expression and manifesting as things. The body accordingly is spirit. We see it as body from the outside or objective point of view. But if we view it from within, it is spirit or being. So all things are one in essence, for all are being, and being is all or absolute. Yet being takes soul form or thought form, so that within the lily is the eternal idea of the lily, which always gives birth to a lily from a lily bulb, and a rose always gives birth to a rose. Each form of life gives birth after its own kind. This is interestingly illustrated in the example of a tree. At one time, the botanist supposed that sap is drawn through the trunk and branches of a tree entirely by capillary action, that is, mechanical force. Yet it is now known that a tree will die from a shock even while its pores are unimpaired, showing that more than mechanical action is needed to explain it. In other words, there must be an organized intelligence within the tree which governs and sustains its life. When a shock or injury occurs, this intelligence withdraws, leaving the shell which it had built for itself to disintegrate into elemental substance again. The elemental substance must, in the nature of the case, be simply disorganized thought energy, which is produced by creative mind as ready-made material upon which the soul principle may draw. We have here, then, sufficient evidence to show that each living thing in nature has a soul. We will not hesitate to say that the soul exists as the being of the tree, the life principle, the thought form, spirit acting as the idea of tree within, and taking on its body as a tree. The soul of the tree, the soul of a lily, the soul of a bird, the soul of a man is that within which makes each thing appear in its chosen form. The soul is the individualization of spirit and shares the nature of the all-soul. It is the life principle and is what we call being. When we speak of it as one or the whole, we call it absolute or eternal being. It is eternal essence, never changes from age to age. It is